What up, Screen Fiends? I'm GB, and you're tuned in to Headz TV, where we like to discuss all the wonderful things appearing on your movie and your TV screens. In this episode, I'm going to give my review discussion, more of a discussion, on Preacher Season 1, Episode 4, titled Monster Swamp. Alright, so as you know, I've been rewatching Preacher Season 1 because I'm so excited for Preacher Season 2. The reason why I decided to do that was to kind of curb my anticipation a little bit, and it didn't work. Because all it did was increase my anticipation and get me more excited for Season 2, and I really can't wait until June 25th. Now, I am having a really good time rewatching these episodes. I'm picking up a lot of stuff I didn't notice the first time. And when you know where the story's going, it makes a lot of things early on make more sense. So I'm just having such a good time. And I'm glad that I have you guys now to share it with. So it makes it even more fun when you get to talk about it. And, yeah. All right, so let's get into it. Season 1, Episode 4, Monster Swamp. Jesse offers Quincannon a bet he cannot refuse. Cassidy tries to fend off Angels, and Tulip works to bring justice to Anvil. All right, first let's talk about Tulip. I say it all the time. I'm gonna say it constantly, I'm sure. I love the character. I love the portrayal by the actress, and I love the way she's written. You don't see a lot of female characters written this way. Where she's so hard and has such an edge, but is still compassionate, is still a human being. You know, a lot of the times when they give a woman edge or make her tough, it's the only side of her you really see, and she usually comes across bitchy if any other emotion other than anger is in her, you know. And I like when you're able to get writers that can actually give a female character dimension and make her feel like a real person as opposed to a specific archetype, you know. All right, so let's start with Tulip. We learn that she actually kind of grew up in that whorehouse that she's been hanging out in. And that adds another interesting dynamic to the character, because before that, we just thought she was raised by her drunk uncle. We didn't really hear much about her mother or father. So to hear that her mother was a prostitute, and the reason why she's so friendly with the prostitutes and the madam of the whorehouse, she, it makes sense that she's so friendly with them. She grew up there. She has compassion for all of them. She understands the line of work, even if she hasn't engaged in that line of work herself. So we see more of her kind of standing up for the girls. In the opening scene, we have Quincannon's men chasing down like women in lingerie, and you think that they're trying to kill her, but then you realize, well, kill them. But then you realize that it's like a game they're playing where it's like paintballs, but it's still it's still very cruel, considering that these are working women that, they're just trying to earn a buck, and the way that you're making them earn a buck is by humiliating themselves and making them act like they're game, like they're, livestock or something. And it's pretty sick, honestly. So they're playing this game, and one of the girls falls into a sinkhole that's probably like over a septic tank or something. One of the guys later in the episode calls it a shithole. So you get this. You get this sense that, another sense, we've already felt it in previous episodes, that Quincannon's men are just all around bad guys, right? So here we have Tulip so the girl falls in the sinkhole and dies. So here we have Tulip not only sticking up for the girls, but now has this feeling of like kind of vengeance in her heart towards the girl that died, because nobody seems to care. And she kind of decides she's going to go after the guy that she thinks is guilty, who's a scumbag that we saw in a previous episode, treating the girls like shit or whatever. It was the guy that Tulip punked at the poker table. So we get this scene where Tulip goes in the room to whoop on him because he thinks he's, I guess, treating the girl bad or whatever. And she ends up knocking the guy out the window, and he's laying there and he looks like he's dead. And it's like, oh, she just killed him. And then she turns around, the guy that she thought she killed, that we all thought she killed, is standing in the doorway with a girl. And then we learn that it was Cassidy that she knocked out of the window, whatever. Earlier, we saw Cassidy hanging out with one of the girls, doing all kinds of fun-looking substances, and we didn't know he was in the whorehouse, but we knew he was with a whore. I mean, but obviously that's where he was. So then we get Tulip rushing, this guy, this stranger that she's never seen before, to a hospital to get him fixed. She's talking to the lady, trying to get informed. She turns around and he's gone. So I love this scene, the way it's shot. She follows the blood trail all the way to like the blood bank of the hospital, and there's Cassidy sucking on a blood bag, and Tulip's face is like, what the hell? Because she doesn't know anything supernatural, at least not to our knowledge. We've never seen her deal with any supernatural forces. She doesn't know about Jesse's power, nothing like that. So this has got to be pretty jarring to her, right? And this is the first time we really see Cassidy and Tulip interact. We did see in the last episode that Cassidy sees Tulip in the church and makes like a face, like you could tell he likes her. So this is an interesting dynamic because Jesse loves Tulip and Cassidy obviously shows some interest that way, sexually or whatever, in Tulip. So that's, and we know how it plays out, so that's fun to watch as it goes. And that's pretty much all we get for Tulip and Cassidy for this episode. It says Cassidy tries to fend off angels, but that doesn't really happen in this episode. I mean, he talks to Jesse a little bit in the beginning of the episode about how they're angels and all that, but Jesse still seems to not believe that Cassidy's a vampire or anything at this point. But I don't think Cassidy's shown him any proof, honestly. So, no, he hasn't yet. All right. So then finally we get Jesse and the Quincannon story. So Jesse gives Quincannon a bet he can't refuse. So here we get a little bit of insight into a little more insight into Jesse's past, and we learn that his father was a preacher and was a good man, because from the other ones we see good man stuff from his dad. But then in this episode we see him whip Jesse in front of other kids, namely in front of Donnie and Tulip, for some stupid little nonsense. He whips him out in broad daylight. And then we get another scene where we see that he's the preacher. I mean, he's a preacher, so it's understandable that he tries to be friendly with everyone in his parish or whatever they call it, right? His congregation. So we see that he was buddies or whatever with Quincannon, because Jesse's outside, steals Quincannon's ashtray, and you see on Jesse's face that he's reluctant to steal it. He feels bad about it later on in the car with the dad. So that just goes back to showing how Jesse does bad things, even as an adult, as a kid, but has a conscience and regrets it and realizes that maybe he's not really a bad person. And this is probably Jesse's through line throughout his whole life, because we see it in today and when he's in his 30s, right? Right, so he comes out of the office, the dad comes out of the office with Quincannon. Quincannon's yelling out like, I renounce him or whatever. So we see that there's a rift between the two, and then we learn later in the conversation that that's the moment when Quincannon, whatever, I'm just going to keep calling him Quincannon, decides that he's not going to be a man of God anymore. They don't really explain it in this episode, but we do get a lot more insight into that later. And then we see that Jesse and Quincannon are still kind of friends. I mean, it makes sense. Jesse's known Quincannon his whole life, So it makes sense that they're friends, even though Quincannon is a bad guy. So you see them there with their little Civil War toys or statues that they're painting and setting up and all that. They're not statues. They're, I don't know, little figures or whatever. And we see that they're kind of buddy. They're talking about faith and about why Quincannon isn't in church anymore, and he doesn't really answer the question. And he does. He answers that I don't tell you how I make my meat. You don't talk to me about your imaginary man in the sky. So I like that a lot, and it shows in that moment, which becomes important later, that Quincannon does not believe in God. He does not believe in Jesse's God. He does not believe in the God that other Baptist or Presbyterian or Catholic or whoever. He doesn't believe in that God, right? He believes in whatever he believes in. And we'll talk about this episode because it will become important in a later one, so we'll get to that later. And then So he asks him to come to church. Kincannon agrees to come to church, and they make a bet. They make a bet that if Jesse can get Kincannon to join the congregation, then then he has to come to church every Sunday, whatever. And if not, then Jesse will give Kincannon the church, the whole grounds, his father's property. And what Jesse's thinking is he's just going to use his power on Kincannon in the church and get him to become, a man of God again. Remember, in the last episode, Jesse kind of got an awakening to his power, and he kind of realized how he can use it to do good and be a righteous man, right? Or at least that's what he thinks. So he's going to do this and bring loyalty and bring more people to his church and to his congregation, and just loyalty within his current congregation, if he can get this man who's notoriously not a man of God anymore to become a man of God again. That's Jesse's plan. And then when he does it, Kincannon resists, and then Jesse uses the power and says, will you follow God? Not will you follow my God. Remember, if you watch my other videos, Genesis, the creature that's inside of Jesse, is a literal being. It only takes things the literal exact way. And Jesse thought he had it figured out. But what he didn't account for is that Kincannon believes in a different kind of God. And like I said, I'll get to that in the next episode. Because they this is all spoiler stuff, because I imagine you guys have seen the episodes by now. So they lead you to believe at the end of this episode that Kincannon is under Jesse's spell. But we're going to learn a little bit more about that, like I said, in the following episodes. And then we also get a little bit of stuff with the mayor and the girl that I always forget her name. She works for Jesse. She helps out anyway for Jesse. And we learn a little bit more that he's been trying to basically be in a relationship with her. She doesn't want to. He does all these things for her. They seem to have like a sexual relationship, and that's it. She's kind of a bad person if you think about it. She's in love with Jesse, and she's stringing this guy along, and I don't know. I guess she's just trying to survive, whatever. But the mayor is in bed with Kincannon. We learn all of that. And he wants Kincannon to sell. Kincannon doesn't want to sell, and all this other stuff. So a lot of, bureaucracy and things that go that I guess they're kind of important for this season, but I don't think this stuff is going to be important for the long run. I remember when the first time I was watching the season, I'm thinking all of these characters feel ancillary. They feel minor. Sheriff Root and Eugene feels important at times, but Sheriff Root, and he's more important in the comics. He's a different kind of guy in the comics. He's a lot worse in the comics from what I've read. Sheriff Root is way worse of a guy in the comic books than he is in the show. Kincannon, you get a sense that he's like the big bad, but still minor in the grand scheme of things, because we're obviously dealing with supernatural elements, and these are all human beings. So I believe that these are only going to be bad guys. These characters here in the town, they're not going to be around for much longer. I believe that the majority of the time spent with all the characters that we've seen are going to be, of course, our main three: Cassidy, Tulip, and Jesse. And then I believe we'll get a lot of Eugene. But other than that, I don't think we're going to get a lot more of these characters in the future. But hell, I could be wrong. So that's it for this one. I liked it. Good episode. It's not... Oh, and then we end off with the Angels, where, they get the phone call in the beginning and they think that it's Heaven calling the Heaven phone, the Heaven Help Me line. And it wasn't. It's the motel dude asking when they're going to leave. And then at the very end of the episode, it rings again. They answer the motel phone, and then they see it's not the motel guy. Now it's Heaven calling them, and they don't know what to do. That turns into something really fun in the next episode. We'll get to that in the next one. But that's it for this one. It's a good episode. It's not as good as the first three. It's the worst of the first four. And usually when I'm watching a show, I give 4 episodes. That's my minimum. I'll give any new show I try 4 episodes. If it gets me after 4, I stick. If it doesn't get me, or if I'm not intrigued, or if I don't care about any characters by episode 4, I'm usually out. Now, I'll tell you the truth. If 1, 2, and 2 weren't as good as they were, I probably would have gave up by episode 4 on this show, even though I like a lot of stuff about it. The first time I saw it, I remember saying, wow, the first 2 episodes are really good. Then episode 3, I was like, it's all right. And then 4, I was like, it's all right. It seems to be moving really slow now. But I'm glad I stuck it out because episode 5 is awesome. And I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. That video is coming next. So sound off down below. Let me know what you thought about Preacher Season 1, Episode 4, sorry. Or what you think about Preacher as a whole. Let me know if you're excited for Season 2. Or anything you want to talk about with Preacher, the comic, anything at all. Sound off down below. I'm good with my comments. I usually get back to all of them. As long as they're reasonable and they're talking about the right subject matter. Yep, so that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Always appreciate it. You guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time.